Good morning. We're continuing with the laws of davening. We're on Kuf Ches 108 in the Mishnah Berurah, and we are on Sifkat and Ches, Sifkat and 8. And we're going to talk about an interesting case today. We mentioned that if a person forgets to daven Shemona Esrei, he forgot Shacharis, let's say, he davens Mincha twice. And when he davens Mincha twice, the first Shemona Esrei that he davens counts as Mincha. And the second one counts as the Tashlumin, or the Shemona Esrei that makes up for Shacharis. So number one is Shemona Esrei for Mincha, and number two is the make-up Shemona Esrei for Shacharis. And we mentioned yesterday that if someone does it in the reverse order, that first he davens the make-up Shemona Esrei, and then he davens for Mincha, the second Shemona Esrei is for Mincha, then his first Shemona Esrei does not count, and he has to daven again. He has to daven a third time for his make-up Shacharis Shemona Esrei. Now we're going to talk about an interesting case. We're going to apply these concepts to an interesting case, which could definitely happen. Okay. Oh, sorry, we're on Tes. I said Sifkat and Ches, we're on Sifkat and Tes. V'tzarech lachzor. Imis pala hashniel l'tashlumin, v'harishon l'shem chova. Let's say you did it in the right order. You're making up, you forgot to daven Shacharis, so comes Mincha. You first Shemona Esrei, you do for Mincha. And the second Shemona Esrei, you do for Shacharis. But what do? But in your first Shemona Esrei, you forgot to say V'sein Talam Matar. The second one you said it. So even though you had in mind that my first Shemona Esrei is going to count for Mincha, nevertheless you forgot to say V'sein Talam Matar. The second Shemona Esrei you had in mind is going to count for Shacharis, and you did remember to say V'sein Talam Matar. V'lo niskar zeh ad achar tefillah shniya, and you didn't remember that you had to go back until you finished the second Shemona Esrei. Now the halacha is that if you forget V'sein Talam Matar and the whole Shemona Esrei, you have to go back and daven again. So for sure this guy has to go back and daven Mincha. But since we said that the Shemona Esrei that one is required to daven at that time has to precede the make-up Shemona Esrei, since his first Shemona Esrei doesn't count because he forgot V'sein Talam Matar, does that mean now that also his make-up Shemona Esrei doesn't count, right? Because how do we view it here? First, he davened the Mincha Shemona Esrei, except he forgot V'sein Talam Matar, so technically, halachically, that Shemona Esrei doesn't count. Then he davened a make-up Shemona Esrei, and he did say V'sein Talam Matar. So do we say that no, the first Shemona Esrei really is good, and he davened it counts, and therefore his Tashlumin counts, his make-up Shemona Esrei counts, because it was after Shemona Esrei which was required? Or do we say no, that since he didn't say V'sein Talam Matar, it's like the Shemona Esrei wasn't davened at all, and therefore he's got to go back and say two more Shemona Esreis. He's got to do one for his Mincha, and then do two for his, a second one for his makeup for Shachar. So in all, he'd be davening four Shemona Esreis. So what is the halacha? Let's see. So Afilu Hachi, says the Mishnah Berurah, Hashniya alta l'tashlumin, v'yispalo achar kach l'shem chova. V'av shehatfila chiyuvis b'taos haisa lo amrinan kamanda lo hispalo klal damil inyan zeh mishum demikol makam be'esh hispalo hashniya tashlumin haya zman tefila. So he writes that you only have to daven one Shemona Esrei. What's the reason? He says the reason that we daven a tashlumin after the makeup Shemona Esrei, after the required Shemona Esrei, is that the tashlumin, the makeup, has to be davened at a time when we're davening. So even though you made a mistake in the first Shemona Esrei by not saying V'sein Talam Matar, and it doesn't count, and you have to redo it, nevertheless, it's still called a time of davening, and you fulfill the tashlumin. So what's the halacha? The halacha is that you, again, we'll say this situation again, because it was a little bit of a complicated case. You daven Shemona Esrei for Mincha, forgot to say V'sein Talam Matar. Then you daven the Tashlumin for Shacharis, a make-up for Shacharis, and you remember to say V'sein Talam Matar. And then after that you say, Oi, in my first Shemona Esrei I didn't say V'sein Talam Matar. So the Mishnah Berurah says, just daven one more Shemona Esrei with V'sein Talam Matar, and that'll count for Mincha. And the Chiddush here, the thing that we're learning, is that even though in some respects that my Tashlumin, the one that counts, preceded the regular Mincha Shemona Esrei, nevertheless, that is enough to, it's still called the time of davening, and I fulfilled the obligation. And also any similar case where you make a mistake in the first Shemona Esrei. Now he's going to say, in case it wasn't complicated enough, we're going to say another opinion. Because of a Magin Gibarim, the Chalze in Kivin beferish b'shniya l'tashlumin. Avalim lo Kivin tov yoser shetalo ashniya l'shem chayva v'yispal achakach l'tashlumin to b'zayotz l'chaladeis. The Magin Gibarim qualifies what we just said. When do you only daven one Shmona Esrei after for to do it for Mincha? That's if when you did the Tashlumin, when you did the makeup Shmona Esrei, you had explicitly in mind that this Shmona Esrei is for that this Shmona Esrei is for a Tashlumin. So you daven to Mincha, and then you say in your head that the second Shmona Esrei, I'm davening right now for a makeup of Shachris. So that's the case where when you realize you made a mistake in the first Shmona Esrei, you would daven you would daven one more time for Mincha. But the Magin Giborim says that if you did not have that in mind in your second Shmona Esrei, you just were davening, the first one you said is for Mincha, and then the second one you were just spacing out and you davened again. So he says in that case what you should do is you'll count Shmona Esrei number 2 as Mincha, and when you daven Shmona Esrei number 3, you should have in mind that that's the makeup. So I hope that was confusing enough for everybody. So let's just review. The cases where you daven Mincha, and you forgot to say V'sein Talo Matar. So the halacha is you have to go back, but you didn't realize yet. Then you daven the second Shmona Esrei to make up for Shachris. And then after that you realize, my first Shmona Esrei, I didn't say V'sein Talo Matar. So what do? So you have to daven the third Shmona Esrei. The third Shmona Esrei you daven, according to the Magin Giborin, if your intent in the second Shmona Esrei was explicit that it should count for a makeup Shachris, then number 3, your Shmona Esrei should be for Mincha. But if you didn't have that intent in the second Shmona Esrei, you just were spacing out, then your third Shmona Esrei should count for the makeup Shachris, and the second one will count for Mincha. So if this ever happens to anybody, please feel free to give me a call, because this, not going to lie, this did have a lot of details. So it's worth it to review also, and I hope everyone has a beautiful day.